Imagine this. You're sitting in a room with a group of people trying to solve a complex problem. Everyone seems to have a piece of the puzzle, but no one can quite see the full picture. Some voices dominate the conversation, while others stay silent, their ideas never making it to the table. Sound familiar? This is where the magica, the mess of collective thinking happens. But what if I told you that the key to unlocking groundbreaking ideas isn't just about gathering smart people in a room? What if it's about how those people think, how they connect, and how they challenge each other? That's exactly what Matthew Syed explores in his fascinating book, Rebel Ideas: The Power of Diverse Thinking. And today, we're diving deep into its core lessons, uncovering how you can harness the power of cognitive diversity to transform the way you work, lead, and innovate. Let's start with a story. In 2003, the CIA was on the hunt for one of the world's most wanted men, Osama bin Laden. For years, they'd been chasing leads, analyzing data, and following trails, but nothing seemed to work. The problem? The team tasked with finding him was made up of people who thought alike. They shared similar backgrounds, similar training, and similar perspectives. They were, in a sense, trapped in an echo chamber. It wasn't until they brought in an outsider young analyst named Michelle Rigby Assad, who had a completely different way of looking at the world, that the pieces started to fall into place. Her unique perspective helped the team see what they'd been missing, and it ultimately led them closer to their target. This story isn't just about intelligence work, it's a powerful reminder of why diversity of thought matters, and it's one of the central themes we'll explore today. So, what can we learn from Rebel Ideas? Over the next little while, we'll unpack 3 core lessons from the book. First, we'll talk about why cognitive diversity, the differences in how we think, is the secret sauce of innovation. Then, we'll explore how groupthink can sabotage even the smartest teams and how to avoid it. Finally, we'll dive into the importance of creating environments where everyone feels empowered to share their ideas, no matter how unconventional they might seem. Along the way, I'll share practical tips, real world examples, and thought provoking questions to help you apply these insights to your own life. So, whether you're leading a team, working on a project, or just curious about how to think better, this is for you. Let's start with the first big idea: cognitive diversity. What is it, and why does it matter so much? Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle. If everyone on your team has the same piece, you're not going to get very far. But if each person brings a different piece or unique perspective, a fresh set of experience, suddenly the picture starts to come together. That's cognitive diversity in action. It's not about having people who look different or come from different backgrounds, though that can help. It's about having people who think differently. Take the world of sports, for example. In 2015, the English rugby team was struggling. They had talented players, but they kept losing to teams that, on paper, they should have beaten. The problem? Their coaching staff was too homogeneous. They all had similar playing styles, similar strategies, and similar blind spots. It wasn't until they brought in Eddie Jones, an Australian coach with a completely different approach, that things started to change. Jones introduced new training methods, new tactics, and a new mindset. The result? The team went on to win 18 matches in a row, setting a new record for English rugby. This is the power of cognitive diversity. It's not just about adding new voices to the mix, it's about adding new ways of thinking. But here's the thing, cognitive diversity doesn't just happen. You have to actively seek it out, and that's where many of us go wrong. We tend to surround ourselves with people who think like us, who agree with us, who validate our ideas. It's comfortable, sure, but it's also limiting. So how can you break out of this trap? Start by asking yourself, who's missing from the table? Whose perspective could challenge your assumptions or open up new possibilities? It might be someone from a different department, a different industry, or even a different generation. The key is to be intentional about seeking out those differences. Now let's talk about the flip side of this coin, groupthink. You've probably heard the term before, but what does it really mean? Groupthink is what happens when a team becomes so focused on consensus that they stop questioning each other. They start to value harmony over honesty, agreement over innovation, and the results can be disastrous. Take the case of the Challenger space shuttle disaster in 1986. Engineers had raised concerns about the shuttle's O-rings, which were known to fail in cold weather. But those concerns were dismissed by higher-ups who were eager to stick to the launch schedule. The result? The shuttle exploded just 73 seconds after liftoff, killing all 7 crew members. It was a tragic reminder of what can happen when dissenting voices are silenced. So, how can you avoid groupthink in your own team? One of the most effective strategies is to appoint a devil's advocate, someone whose job is to challenge the status quo and poke holes in the prevailing narrative. This might sound counterintuitive, but it's incredibly powerful. By encouraging constructive conflict, you create a culture where ideas are tested, assumptions are questioned, and better solutions emerge. Another strategy is to create psychological safety, a term coined by Harvard professor Amy Edmondson. Psychological safety is the belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, or concerns. When people feel safe to express themselves, they're more likely to share their true thoughts, even if they go against the grain. This brings us to our third big idea: creating environments where everyone feels empowered to contribute. Think about the last time you were in a meeting. Did everyone speak up? Or were there people who stayed quiet even though they might have had something valuable to say? If you're like most of us, it's probably the latter, and that's a problem. Because when certain voices dominate the conversation, we miss out on the full range of ideas and perspectives that could lead to breakthrough solutions. So, how can you create a more inclusive environment? Start by paying attention to the dynamics of your team. Who's speaking and who's not? Are there people who are being interrupted or talked over? If so, take steps to level the playing field. One simple but effective technique is to use a round robin approach, where everyone takes turns sharing their thoughts. This ensures that everyone has a chance to be heard, not just the loudest or most confident voices in the room. Another strategy is to actively seek out input from quieter team members. You might say something like, "We've heard from a few people, but I'd love to hear from others who might have a different perspective." This sends a clear message that everyone's ideas are valued. Now, let's bring all of this together. We've talked about the importance of cognitive diversity, the dangers of groupthink, and the need to create inclusive environments. But what does this look like in practice? Let's take a hypothetical example. Imagine you're leading a team tasked with developing a new product. You've got a tight deadline and the pressure is on. How can you apply the lessons from Rebel Ideas to ensure your team succeeds? First, you'd want to assemble a diverse team, not just in terms of demographics, but in terms of thinking styles. You might include someone with a background in design, someone with a deep understanding of customer needs, and someone who's a whiz at data analysis. Each person brings a unique perspective to the table, which increases the chances of coming up with a truly innovative solution. Next, you'd want to guard against groupthink. You could do this by appointing a devil's advocate or by encouraging team members to play that role themselves. You might say something like, "Let's take a minute to think about what could go wrong with this idea. What are the potential pitfalls and how can we address them?" This kind of constructive criticism can help you identify blind spots and refine your approach. Finally, you'd want to create an environment where everyone feels comfortable sharing their ideas. This might mean setting ground rules for meetings, like no interrupting or no idea is too crazy. It might also mean checking in with quieter team members to make sure they're being heard. By fostering a culture of openness and respect, you'll unlock the full potential of your team. As we wrap up, let's take a moment to recap what we've covered. We started by exploring the power of cognitive diversity idea. The differences in how we think can lead to better outcomes. We then looked at the dangers of groupthink and how to avoid it by encouraging constructive conflict and creating psychological safety. Finally, we talked about the importance of creating inclusive environments where everyone feels empowered to contribute. These are the key lessons from Rebel Ideas, and they're lessons that can transform the way you work, lead, and innovate. But here's the thing: understanding these ideas is just the first step. The real magic happens when you put them into practice. So I want to leave you with a challenge. Think about a team you're part of, whether it's at work, at school, or in your community. How can you apply the principles of cognitive diversity, constructive conflict, and inclusivity to make that team stronger? What's one small step you can take today to bring these ideas to life? Remember, change doesn't happen overnight, but with intention and effort, you can create a culture where Rebel Ideas thrive. And if you found this exploration of Rebel Ideas helpful, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. What resonated with you? What questions do you have? I'd love to hear from you. And if you're hungry for more insights like these, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Until next time, keep thinking differently, keep challenging the status quo, and keep embracing the power of Rebel Ideas.